r/entitled people. Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled people stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen's sister stole my bike, so I called the cops on her. After that, am I the jerk for calling my sister's wedding a knockoff of my own? And after that, how my dad didn't go to Vietnam. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets the cops called on her. If you think I'm afraid of the cops, you obviously haven't read enough stories about me. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen's sister stole my bike, so I called the cops on her. I was saving all year for a birthday present for my son, who's turning 14 this year. I was able to get him a bike, and he's been wanting one for a while since he grew out of his old one about a year ago. His birthday is next Friday, and he's been extremely excited. The bike was kept in my parents' garage, and my sister, who's also 14, decided to take it out for a joyride and managed to get it stolen. I told her she had to find it in 24 hours or I'd be calling the cops. My parents thought I was just trying to scare her, but I really wasn't. I'm a single parent and I saved for months just to get it. My sister couldn't find it, so this afternoon I called the police and they've told me they probably won't be able to get the bike back, but my sister will end up getting a slap on the wrist. My parents are mad at me because I have the potential to ruin my sister's life with this. Am I the jerk? Your parents need to take a loan to buy a bike for your son for his birthday, and your sister can get a job to pay them back if need be. Then you'll drop the charges. Until then, she goes through the court process. Not the jerk. You assume that in order to afford the bike, they need to get a loan? Okay, Reddit. Not the jerk. Your parents should pay for an exact replacement bike for your son. The sister should earn money for chores and contribute. Not the jerk. Let's get this straight. Your sister was the first person who stole the bike. It was not just a little joyride. This will not have lifelong ramifications on her getting jobs or into college or renting apartments. It will, however, hold her accountable for her choices and actions. And your parents, like it or not, they should have at the very least offered to pay for a replacement and helped her look for the bike. So a date in family court may be the rude awakening that they all need. Well, what do you think? Is Opie the jerk for calling the cops on her sister or not? Please let us know. Act like a thief, you'll get treated like one. Next. Am I the jerk for calling my sister's wedding a knockoff of my own? I've always been the favorite among my siblings. As the baby of the family and the only boy, I got doted on a little extra. This extra doting increased when I expressed an interest in dance and actually discovered a talent for it. This makes sense in my mind. My schedule required more time and money devoted to it since I now had to be taken to classes and showcases, needed the proper attire, etc. There were a few years of tension between my sisters and I, especially during our teen years, where it seemed like they blamed me for what was going on or expected me to apologize for our parents' choices, something I adamantly refused to do. Tensions seemed to ease some when we went our separate ways. My sisters stuck around in our hometown to get jobs while I moved to a city about an hour away for college. I met my now husband there, and despite what my parents tried to talk us into, we got married in a tiny ceremony at the local courthouse where only immediate family was present. We had a party with our close friends and family later to celebrate, but the ceremony itself was just like we wanted. A small part of an intimate and peaceful day focused on my partner and I. My oldest sister got engaged a couple months ago, and my parents jumped at the chance to start planning an over-the-top wedding. I've been around for some of it, and a lot of what is being offered to the new happy couple is what was suggested to my husband and I when they were trying to convince us to have a big wedding. This didn't bother me at all. In fact, I was happy my sister was getting what seemed like the wedding of her dreams. Unfortunately, it seems she's still holding a grudge over what happened when we were kids and has made multiple jokes about how she's the favorite now and that this is payback for all of the things she missed out on when I was being chauffeured to dance practice. I took the first few in stride, but it's getting old now that it's been repeated so many times. I recently told her the jokes were getting old, but that still didn't stop her. I finally had enough last night, and after a few drinks at a little weekend family get-together, I told her that her wedding was essentially a knockoff of mine, and that I doubted our parents would be putting this much effort in had I gone through with the extravagant plans they wanted me to have a few years ago. She left the room in tears, and I've gotten mixed reactions from family over what I said. Am I the jerk? ETA. I have no interest in special attention from my parents and moved on from the feud with my sisters years ago, as I thought that they had as well. I live a good distance from them all with a life of my own and can only make it back to visit a few times a year. This doesn't stem from me craving attention. I'm glad my sister is getting all of it, as my parents have a tend to hover even all these years later. My complaint is in the repeated jokes, despite my request that they stop. Yes, you're the jerk, and it sounds like you've been the jerk their entire lives. You happily soaked up your parents' attention, knowing you were the favorite, and didn't even care that they didn't share your golden child status. Then, the second the attention was off of you, you decide to try to attack as low as you can, instead of being happy that your siblings actually got to experience some of the rarefied air you've been in your entire life. Your siblings taunt you because you are entitled and spoiled and not very likable as a result. You taunted her because you are mean and resent not being the center of attention. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. After years of feeling unimportant to your parents, your sister can't control her giddiness at finally having their attention. While her comments are obnoxious, it speaks to a lifetime of being overshadowed by you. While you're not responsible for your parents' crappy behavior, you need to acknowledge it and acknowledge you believe that you deserved it because dance? Give me a break. The biggest problem is that you still see no problem with it. And the minute your sister is getting their attention, you have a problem with it. You're so full of yourself, you have to claim the wedding you didn't have as your own. You're a crappy brother. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his sister? Please let us know. Those jokes she's making would kind of get on my nerves too. I don't know if OP's as bad as they're trying to make him out to be. How my dad didn't go to Vietnam. In 1969, my dad graduated from Rice University with a 5-year master's in chemical engineering. Edit. Since so many commenters seem to think he was some kind of rich kid, his parents both taught public school, and he went to college on a full academic scholarship. The Vietnam War was raging, and although he and his classmates had all received deferments during their studies, their deferments were over, and it was time for them to go before the draft board. Most of his classmates weren't worried because they were slated to see the Houston Draft Board, which had a reputation for handing out continued deferments like Halloween candy. However, my dad is from Oklahoma, which meant that he had to be evaluated by the Tulsa Draft Board, which was much, much stricter. Dad had applied to the chemical engineering PhD program at Stanford and had been accepted with a full stipend. He was excited to go, but first he had to get past the draft board. The Stanford facility wrote a letter to the Tulsa Draft Board explaining that Mr. Hammer would be embarking on a research program that would greatly benefit the war effort and asking for another deferment. The Tulsa Draft Board wrote back in short order. Mr. Hammer had already benefited from the only deferment he was going to get, and thus he was to present himself to the Army Physical Examination Center post-haste. Dad was sad to lose his shot at a PhD, but not too sad, because now he could marry my mom. He'd also had several job offers already, so he accepted an offer from Exxon and he and my mom got married. His superiors at Exxon wrote another letter to the Tulsa Draft Board explaining that Mr. Hammer was now gainfully employed in the oil and gas industry, where he would be conducting engineering research that would greatly benefit the war effort, and asking for another deferment. Just as quickly, the Tulsa Draft Board wrote back, reiterating that Mr. Hammer was not going to receive another deferment, and that if he didn't hurry up and get his Army physical, they might have to get the law involved. Disappointed, my dad went to his Army physical as scheduled. He's always been a healthy guy, and he performed just fine on most of the examinations, up until the very end when they measured his heart rate. It was over 100 beats per minute. "Well, we can't pass you with that," said the Army doctors, "but you're probably just nervous. Come back in 2 weeks and we'll give you another physical." "Nervous?" said my dad to himself. "I can work with that." For the next 2 weeks, my dad spent every spare moment basically teaching himself the opposite of meditation. He'd close his eyes and think of the most horrifying mental images he could, trying to drive his heart rate as high as possible. Finally, the day of the physical arrived, and things went much as before. He passed nearly everything with flying colors, but when the time came to measure his heart rate, once again it was well over 100. The Army doctors promptly diagnosed him with tachycardia, scored his physical 4F, and sent him home. He's in his 70s now, and apart from his mysteriously high heart rate, which I inherited, he's always been in great cardiac health and still is. So glad your dad didn't have to go over there. Some of us have actual brains and are meant to have an actual impact on the world. I would never serve in the military, and neither would any of my friends. It's honestly just a huge waste of taxpayers' money. I never thank anyone for their service because it's a load of BS. When people ask me, "Oh, what about all those who paid the ultimate price?" I say that choice was theirs. just like my choice to focus on my artwork. One day, I'll be a top animator for my favorite anime because that's what I've set as my goal. I'll be darned if I ever throw away my dreams to join some stupid broken system. Hey Reddit boy, as a vet, how does that last comment make you feel? I'd really rather not talk about it. My daughter-in-law keeps making social media posts that make me look bad. I have a son, Ryan, who's 22. Ryan has a wife, Holly, who's also 22. They got married and moved in together around 4 months ago after dating for 3 years. I'm really happy for them. There's just a small problem though. Holly has recently started making posts on social media with jokes about how horrible mother-in-laws are all the time. When seeing them, I thought I did something to upset Holly. I asked her about it and she insisted that I hadn't upset her and that she just posts them because she thinks they're funny. I asked Ryan about it and he said that Holly never seemed upset at me and told me that I'm overthinking it. But Holly keeps making these posts. The rest of my family have even been asking me if everything is okay between me, Ryan, and Holly because they've seen the post too. The last straw was when Holly made a post about arguments with monsters-in-law. Now everyone in my family thinks I argued with Holly when that didn't even happen. I asked Holly about it again, and she said that once again, she just posted it because she thought it was funny, not anything actually personal to me. I told Holly that she's making me uncomfortable and that she's making my family think I'm being horrible to her. Holly said that's not her problem and that people need to learn how to take a joke. I asked Holly to please stop making these posts because people aren't going to interpret them that way. Holly said I'm being unreasonable and told me I can't tell her what to do and said I'm a bossy jerk. Report her to Facebook for harassment. Sometimes you can get posts yanked. You're the jerk. Not everything is about you. Some people like Reader's Digest jokes. Get over yourself. You're the jerk. Well, if you were not having a fight before, now you are. You can't control other people's choice of humor. Sharing a funny meme about mothers-in-law is not an attack on your personal mother-in-law. It is not her job to call up confused relatives and explain jokes that they don't get. You should apologize for overstepping. In the future, don't be so worried about what other people think. Have confidence in yourself and your relationship. And remember that if you are insecure about something, that's your problem, not someone else's. Do you ever get the sense that the people on Reddit just really don't like mothers-in-law? Imagine if OP was the one posting all these memes about how much daughter-in-laws suck. Don't make that new order for the large Canadian pizza. Yesterday, I was looking for something easy for dinner and phoned the nearest pizza from a small building. I ordered a large Canadian pizza for pickup, and the person on the phone confirmed the location and my phone before telling me I could pick it up in 30 minutes. At no point was price mentioned in this exchange. I had specifically ordered this because I was looking at the website and I saw that they had a large banner on their site which stated they had specific types of large pizzas for $16.99. On arrival at the Red Roof Pizza from a small building location, I went inside to pick it up. Server: that'll be $27.67. Me: I'm sorry, I thought your website mentioned that this large pizza was $16.99. Server: sorry, we don't offer that price over the phone. It's online only. Me, planning my compliance: I'm sorry, you're telling me that if I call in, my pizza is almost double the cost as ordering online? Server: sorry, the details are on the poster behind you, and you can see the small print in the corner that says online only. The details were, as promised, in very small print on a very large poster. Throughout this, she had been holding the pizza out towards me, waiting for me to take it after paying. I admit, I could have been a bit more polite, but I was a bit hangry and grumpy and just wanted to eat my pizza for the advertised price. I turned abruptly away and left her with the pizza. I walked back to the waiting area and pulled out my phone, placing an order online for the same pizza I had ordered over the phone. I refused to make eye contact, but watched her quizzically looking at me in my peripheral vision, all the while holding my pizza. She turned to put it down, but glanced at her computer, presumably seeing the notification for the same order, under the same name with the same cell phone number. She looked from her screen to me, where I sat looking at my phone, watching out of the corner of my eye. I'd like to think this was our pizza standoff, our duel of wits, our respective slices of stubbornness. After a few drawn-out seconds, she called me back up. Server: okay, you can pay for your pizza now. The total comes to $17.83. I paid it in cash, and they handed me the same pizza they had been holding the whole time. The pepperoni on the pizza, icing on the cake, was hearing them call into the kitchen just before I walked out. Don't make that new order for the large Canadian pizza. Am I the jerk for threatening to leave my daughter's wedding because of her rules? I'm 48, male, and my daughter, who's 26, she had a wedding yesterday. She moved back to our home state of Utah with her fiance after living in Boston for college and dental school. She does not seem happy to be back here and said that she only moved back because her husband, who's 28, male, his company transferred him here. She knows that in our area, families run large. She's one of 3 kids only because my wife, who's 47, became sick after our youngest, but it is not uncommon to have families of 8. When she started planning her wedding, she started worrying about venue capacity and having to spend money on babysitters. For couples with small kids on her list, she made it clear that she could not accommodate kids under 4 at the wedding. This caused a lot of ire, and we got phone calls asking why. My daughter's rationale was that she thought older kids would enjoy a party more. My daughter's younger sister, Ashley, who's 24, had been married for 2 years and begged her sister to invite her husband's brother and his wife to this wedding too. Ashley's brother-in-law, 41, male, and his wife, who's 33, they have 5 kids, 4 of whom are under the age of 4. When they RSVP'd, they indicated they'd only be bringing their 8-year-old daughter. I know Ashley's husband's brother well, as he funded my brother's new business and employs Ashley's husband, my son-in-law, in a job that allows Ashley and him to be full-time parents to their kids. However, that side of the family took a while to warm up to Ashley, as they are wary to newcomers. So the day of the wedding comes, and everybody arrives with the kids they RSVP'd for, and then Ashley's brother-in-law arrives early with all 5 of their kids in tow. The nanny they have for their kids is not there. My daughter is angry when she hears of this, and their explanation is that their younger kids were upset and they wanted to be in these wedding pictures too. An argument ensues where my daughter says that they had on-call nannies and just for whatever reason decided this was the event they didn't want to leave their kids for. I look over and Ashley is getting upset and her brother-in-law and sister-in-law won't budge. The toddlers are getting anxious and starting to loudly cry, and I finally tell my daughter to just let them in or we'd be here forever. She asked why I was taking their side, and I finally say that she either lifts this child-free policy for family or just cancel the wedding because I was done with her rules and leaving. My daughter says, "Really, Dad? Way to take sides." She then stormed off, and there was a minute where she considered walking down the aisle with her future father-in-law. She ended up relenting, but says her wedding is marred by this event. Am I the jerk? I was afraid that this would become this standoff and Ashley would face ire from her in-laws. You're the jerk. She didn't want small kids at the wedding. You chose to side against her and try to force the issue. You're in the wrong. If there's one thing we've learned from these Reddit stories about weddings, it's that one of the most important things you need to hire on is security. Sad, but true. I hope you enjoy failing your final college class and have to retake it. First of all, this didn't take place in the US, nor is English my primary language, so a few things might seem weird or confusing. Just ask for clarification if needed. During my stay in college, and for a few years after graduation, I had a side hustle where I charged people a small amount of money to format their academic papers according to our national standards as set by our National Association of Technical Norms. On top of that, I would also write an abstract in a foreign language, English, and even get your bibliographical references up to snuff. It wasn't much. $60 got your paper formatted as it should be, $80 got your references properly inserted from scratch, and $100 got you the whole thing with a carefully written abstract. It wasn't much, even on our local currency, especially considering that there are people who do this full-time and charge an arm and a leg for it. However, that also includes proofreading, but a slower turnout time. This means that it's normal for people to hire those services months or weeks in advance from the deadline for turning in your papers. This story is set in late 2017. I had just left my job, and meanwhile, I was formatting academic work almost full-time since it was the end of the semester. This was a particularly busy semester since, if you do good work, people will refer you to their friends, who will refer you to their other friends, and so forth. Word of mouth really does work. Somehow, I was recently being looked up by a lot of people in one specific course in the healthcare area. Now, I don't particularly like formatting papers from people in healthcare for a few particular reasons, but hey, you're not going to turn away honest pay for honest work if you're unemployed. In any case, they all seemed to be in the same class because the deadline was the same, December 9th at 8 p.m. and not a second longer. The night before, I was enjoying a cold beer, and I was messaged by an unknown number who said they got my contact from so-and-so that spoke highly of my work. When she mentioned she needed me to format her paper, I said I don't take on any new work the day before it's due because that always ends in complications for me. Well, she pleaded, nay, begged me to do it, said she would pay me a little over my usual rate and that she was good for it, Scout's honor. I sighed before I replied, okay, fine, but I'm only sending you your paper once payment goes through, okay? She instantly replied, yes, OMG, thanks. A few minutes later, I had what had to be the worst paper of the semester in my files. Whoever wrote it took no care or had no idea how to tame Microsoft Word. It was all over the place, with different fonts, spacing, a few things outlined. I began regretting this already, but no backing out now. I put on some music and cracked out my whip and began taming that vile beast of a paper, and 4 hours later, I was done. What had once been a literary work equivalent of an orc was now a proper, formatted, neatly organized academic paper. I messaged her, the work is done, I'm awaiting payment, and went to sleep. I woke up around midday to see she had replied with a picture of a receipt for a bank deposit made through an ATM to my account and the amount that was agreed. Normally this would be it, but the problem was that it was made at really early in the morning, so the bank hadn't processed it yet. I logged into my bank account, and sure enough, the amount was there, but as pending verification. I messaged her to let her know she would have her paper as soon as the bank verified and cleared the funds. To my surprise, she replied she needed the paper now, as she was meeting with her professor one last time to make sure everything was good. Now, I've had to deal with this before, and let's just say I've already learned my lesson, so I wasn't risking getting ripped off. Well, we had some back and forth for a while, as expected, saying she was good for it, and can I please send the paper now? K thanks, bye. I might have sent it if I knew her, which I didn't, and the person who referred her to me was someone who had been referred by someone else who, you get the idea. At that moment, I got a hunch that the funds wouldn't clear, and wouldn't you know it, around 3:30 p.m., after getting barraged with a ton of messages, I checked my bank statement. The deposit had been canceled by the bank with the reason, empty envelope. At that moment, I was a bit aggravated at myself for not following my own rule of not taking up work that is due the next day. Oh well. I messaged her a picture after scrubbing out my bank balance and told her that I would not be sending her paper. A few moments later, I got a phone call and she was panicked, saying that she swore she had put the money into the envelope and into the ATM, and it must have been the bank's fault, and that she was going to deposit it right now, and could I please send her the file? I told her I was only going to send her the file if she met up and paid me in cash, to which she made up thousands of excuses as to why she couldn't meet up today. Oh well, it's not my deadline. Around 7:20 p.m., I was being barraged with messages and a few phone calls, to which I ignored. The calls stopped at 8:30 p.m., long after the deadline. Surprisingly, a few days later, when I was out running some errands, I ran into one of my other clients, who casually asked me if I had taken on work from so-and-so, and if something happened. I said I did and asked why. Well, she told me so-and-so blasted me to pretty much all of her classmates as being a charlatan and a thief, because according to her, I took the money up front, vanished with no paper trail, and because she missed the deadline to turn in her paper, she had failed the class and would have to retake it next semester. Ouch. I hope that money she ripped me off for helped soften the cost of having to retake that class, as it would cost her that amount several times over. But hey, a lesson in honesty and good faith has no price, right? My mom stole my $150,000 inheritance and kicked me out of the family when I asked her to pay it back. My mother has me all kinds of messed up, and I'm not sure if I should just walk away. Backstory. I'm 27, female, and my mom, who's 53, has had a really hard life. She was in an accident at age 5 and lost her mother. She didn't have an active father, and no one on her mom's side wanted to take her in, so she went into foster care for a few years. Not a good experience from what she told me. At age 8, she was adopted into a loving, wealthy family of 2 college professors, along with an adopted brother. She had a hard time adjusting, made a lot of bad decisions, and basically ran away in her late teens. This whole time, her adopted parents were doing everything they could to reach out to their daughter and help her get back on her feet, but mostly their efforts were wasted. She has a kid at age 18, then again a few years later. She lost them to foster care, and then had me with a different man. Eventually, she gets her 2 first kids back, my older half-brothers, has me, marries twice again, and has 2 more kids, my younger brothers. In total, she has 5 kids, 4 boys, with me, the middle girl. We grew up very, very poor. with our mother always gone or bringing back strangers to party, leaving me to raise the youngest two. We would visit our grandparents, mom's adopted parents, for holidays and special occasions, but with my mother's strained relationship with them, we weren't able to visit as much as we kids would have liked to. My childhood was crappy to say the least. That being said, I loved my grandparents, especially my grandpa, dearly, and they loved us kids back. And as much as they struggled with my mom, they were nothing but loving towards her from what I understand. The thing about my grandparents is that education was very important to them. I remember the encouragement for college started very early on from them, and they made it very clear that I was expected to go to college. When I was allowed to visit them, they would take me to bookstores and let me loose. They'd say, "Okay, pick one," and I would come back with 3 or 4, unable to decide. They'd laugh and get me all the books, which I could not believe. I took pride in knowing my grandparents thought so highly of my future and was determined to keep making them proud. Fast forward to 2005. I'm in 5th grade, and my grandma passed from long-term alcohol use. My mom has a wake-up call and gets sober, but is still absent from AA meetings and general disinterest. Then in 7th grade, my grandpa passed as well from the same illness. This crushed me. I wasn't able to articulate any of it at the time, but that's when the big-time depression rolled in. From there on, school was very difficult for me, as well as my home life. I ended up falling pretty deep into my sorrow and stopped going to school around my junior year of high school. After a breakthrough, I decided that I had to get the heck away from that house and ultimately moved out at age 17 to a bigger city about 45 minutes away. I barely finished high school with a 1.75 GPA, and somehow 2 teachers from the new school convinced me to sign up for the community college. They helped me fill out my FAFSA and everything. Side note, when I received my mom's financial info for that year for the FAFSA, I saw she claimed to make around $10,000 a year. That's how poor we were. After my first semester in college, I was hooked. Science was actually pretty cool. I realized I loved to learn and kept pushing through. I worked full-time, busted my tail, and after 4 years, I finally achieved an associate's degree. But that wasn't enough for me. I was able to transfer over to a university that I would have never been able to attend right out of high school due to grades and whatnot, and finish my BS in my favorite field of science. In total, it took me 6 years to get my BS degree, but I worked so hard, and I was so proud of what I was able to accomplish. Keep in mind, during my whole college career, my mother was characteristically absent and dismissive of what I was doing. When I was in my early 20s, still at community college, she packed up her and my baby brothers and moved 5 hours up north. I didn't have a car and couldn't come see them hardly at all. I was upset by this, of course, but that didn't matter to her. She eventually moved back a couple of years later. Anyway, I graduate college with $40,000 college debt. Not so bad compared to most I always thought. I knew that I would have to work hard and accrue debt to get where I wanted in life, so this was a necessary burden, and I've accepted that. However, things have turned in recent events and my effort to get closer to my late grandparents. I reached out to their close personal friends, let's call them the Johnsons, to get a better idea of what my grandparents were like. They were so close that the Johnsons were actually the arbiter of my grandpa's will. In conversation, it came out that when my grandparents passed away, they left a $150,000 inheritance for their grandchildren's education. However, 3 years later, around 2010, my mother came to the Johnsons and confessed to them that she blew all of the education money. On what? I have no idea, but I do remember her buying a 2-door sports car, our only car for a 6-person family, after Grandpa passed, so I'm sure the rest of her purchases were great investments. This was really upsetting to me for many reasons. I was the only grandchild that actually went to college, and that money could have easily covered my expenses. If I'd had that money, I wouldn't have had to spend every moment for 6 years busting my tail. I could have afforded to only have 1 job instead of 3. I could have spent that time studying and getting better grades, or doing an internship, which literally makes or breaks your career in my field. I wasn't able to do any of that, and haven't been able to get a related job. Not the worst thing, but unfortunate. I have a fine job in tech that I wouldn't have been able to get without my degree. I'm plenty happy with my decision. My relationship with her was already strained, but this really crossed a line for me. I emailed her telling her I knew what she did and she needed to pay me back. That's probably not going to happen. She owns a small business in social media and it doesn't do that great. I kind of want to just cut ties forever, but I'm so angry. I also want her to pay me back the money she stole. I'm so out of my depth. I don't know what to do. Am I the jerk for flexing my real-world success on my terrible former high school teacher? I'm 23, male, and my former high school encourages all parents to attend parent-teacher conferences, so my parents always go to my younger brother, who's 17, conferences. He's a senior in high school and has the same teacher I did back when I was his age. This guy was a terrible teacher. He was condescending and snarky, and he always started crap with me. I always got excellent grades since I was smart, but he never liked me. I didn't like him either. And at the end of the year, he told me I'd never make it in the real world. I think he picked me out because I was confident and outgoing, and it made him insecure. In reality, I was always going to make it in the real world, and he probably realized I would surpass him pretty quickly. Maybe he was jealous or something, I don't know. And I already have. I just graduated college a year ago and already have a nice job in finance that pays more than he'll ever dream of stuck in a classroom. So I decided to take my brother to conferences instead of my parents so I could give him a nice life update and check in. He looked wary and surprised when he saw me. To paraphrase how the whole conversation went, he was like, "Hey, how have you been, OP? I haven't seen you in a bit." And I was like, "Yeah, it's been a minute, Andy. I don't have much time to come around. I just graduated college with honors, and my new job in finance keeps me pretty busy. The pay makes it well worth it though. How about you? Did you get promoted to principal yet?" I knew he hadn't, since my brother told me he had run for the open principal position and didn't win. He was like, "No, but that's okay," to save face. And I was like, "Yeah, and you always have this cute little classroom. Man, I forgot how small it is. Charming." And he was indignant, like, "Yes, I quite like it." He gave me my brother's report card when the conference was almost over. I knew his wife had a baby since my mom follows her on Facebook and is always telling me things like that. I said as I got up to go, "Well, I'm sure your wife must be so pleased with you making it in the real world as a teacher. I'm sure you're bringing in so much dough for the family with this little gig. Maybe you'll even upgrade to a medium-sized classroom one day. Bye, Andy," and started walking out. I gave him the thumbs up sign, and he gave me a sarcastic wave really aggressively. I could tell he was steaming. Am I the jerk for flexing on my crappy teacher and proving him wrong that I'm the one who couldn't make it in the real world? Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.